Hi guys, so I'm trying to get Mr. James out of his enclosure, but I don't think he's interested. Come on, sir. Hmm. May take a little bit of time. Hmm. No, don't think he's having it. So tonight, this is a special video, and I don't normally show my face because I'm usually holding my phone camera. And but tonight, um, well, hit 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel, so thank you very much for that, guys. Really appreciate the support. So I thought I'd shoot a bit of a different kind of video, really, to what I normally show. So I was hoping to get Mr. Jinx out on my hand and show you guys me holding him and show him off a little bit. But he's being very lazy tonight. He doesn't want to come out. So yeah. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys to let you know really about how I got into this hobby, what got me into it, what got me started. And I think it was, if we go way back to when I was about a youngster, 7, 8, or 9 years old. I was with the family, with my brother and my parents, and we visited a safari park, or like some sort of like zoo type place in the UK. It could have been Knowsley or Chester. I can't remember exactly where it was, but anyway. And we were in the reptile house, and I saw this huge iguana, and I just became obsessed. Like I was mesmerized by this iguana in its enclosure, and I was like, I want one of them, as you do when you're a kid, yeah. Not taking into any consideration of the lighting or the size of the enclosure or anything. I was just totally like besotted with this iguana, and it was a green iguana, and I just was like, I want one. So anyway, further down the line, not long after that visit, Mum took me to a pet shop local to where we live. Unfortunately, it's no longer there. And this is going back now to, I don't know, mid 90s. And the little pet shop, it was in Colwyn Bay, which is close to where I live. But it's sadly no longer there. And anyway, so we went along this pet shop, Mum and I, and well, we went in, and I wasn't really doing any of the talking with the pet shop owner. It was my mum doing all the talking and asking the questions, while I was, God knows, my mind had got interested in the kind of other reptiles or whatever, and looking at those, whilst my mum was talking the serious stuff with the pet shop owner. Anyway, but I do remember the pet shop owner saying to me, well, you do realise that they need a very large enclosure, and how big is your house? How big is your room? So anyway, cut long story short, we ended up walking out of there with a leopard gecko, a female. We didn't know what sex it was at the time, because back then I didn't have really much idea as to the type of care that they needed. Obviously, the pet shop guy knew what he was talking about, But you know, it was all new. So we ended up with a leopard gecko in a little cricket tub, mealworm tub, and we got the tank, and it was only, I mean, size wise, it was probably about, I don't know, say 50 centimeters length, roughly, maybe a little bit less, and then about 30 centimeters width, and about 30 or 40 centimeters high. So it was pretty small, yeah. Heat mat as the heat source, sand as the substrate, and a water dish, and a food bowl, and a couple of hides. There was no mention of Kelsey dish or anything, but we did do the dusting and the gut loading of the food beforehand. And she lived till about, well, I had her for about 12 years, and then she passed away. And she was only a youngster when I first had her. And Ozzy was her name, we called her. And then several years after having Ozzy, so before she passed on, we took on another leopard gecko, an adult, a male. We called him Oscar, and he was 2 years old when we, no, sorry, he would have been younger than that. He was approximately 1, maybe 2 years old when we had him. And he lived till he was about 15. I did try breeding them, but through naivety and lack of research and whatnot, it didn't go well. I ended up in the excitement of finding the eggs, holding them, and then the smell, my smell on the eggs, she ended up destroying them, didn't she? And I was upset by that, so I didn't bother trying to breed them again. But just on simple setup, so like heat mats, there was no UVB, no overhead lights, no LEDs, no anything fancy like that. It was just simple sand or bark chip as a substrate, heat mats, and a water wall, a couple of hides, and that was it. And their staple diet was crickets, locusts, and mealworms, and maybe the odd waxworm. There was dubia roaches then. I'd never even heard of them. And you know, we fed the crickets like bits of chopped apple and carrots and whatnot, and they lived pretty decent lives. And we, you know, I remember holding them and whatnot. They were, compared to this guy here, I mean, this guy is like really, really hyperactive. And I think he's got all the kind of personality, kind of autistic, dyslexic, ADHD, all of them rolled into one, I think sums him up. Yeah. He is a character and a half. My other two, I love them to bits, don't get me wrong. But they were more kind of timid, more shy. But that could have been down to maybe the lack of husbandry. Don't know. So anyway, when Ozzy and Oscar passed away, I took a bit of a sort of, well, it was a bit of a break really from reptile keeping. Leopard gecko. I've only owned leopard geckos really. I had a bearded dragon for a few years, but then I had to rehome him just because my circumstances changed. I had to move out, and just it was a little bit awkward, so I had to rehome him. But the leopard geckos. So I took a bit of a break then for a few years. And then it was after COVID, really, when I moved back to my mum's, which is where I am now, that I decided to get another leopard gecko and this guy here. So it started off, though, before I got him, and again, you see, I didn't really read up on it much. I just thought, you know, I fancy buying another leopard gecko, just, you know, for fun, company, and all that. And I thought, well, I've kept them before and they live pretty well, so I'll get another one. And so I went to another local pet shop, and he again gave me some basic sort of advice. I mean, the ones he kept, they were babies, really tiny babies, and um, they were kept on wood chip, which I mean, I didn't think anything of because I didn't really do any kind of like advanced research. I didn't know anything about any Facebook groups on husbandry or anything. I was just kind of going off my own head in a way. And I picked up a guidebook from the pet shop, some vitamin and calcium supplements, some food. It was kind of like an all-in-one sort of package, really. So the tank and everything. And I bought 2 females, babies, and they lived together. Yeah. Sadly, one was the more domineering one, and I was feeding them and I was, making sure they were hydrated and all that. Sadly, one of them was the more dominant one, so then I had to kind of like separate them. But through it was kind of like strange. They I think they caught the crypto. Yeah. So I think I haven't put, you know, I mean, I took them to the vet, but they weren't in a very good way. And I think what it was, when they were living together, the domineering one was bullying the other one, which was why I had to separate them. But then health issues sort of kicked in as well. So problems started to arise. And when I looked, it was then when I started researching husbandry groups online. So I found a group on Facebook and joined, and then I found loads of advice which was kind of contradicting the advice that I was given from the pet shop. And not the first pet shop, because he knew his stuff, and my 2 geckos, they lived a good life up till, well, one lived till she was 12, and then the second one lived, he was about 14 or 15. So the 2 babies that I bought most recently, so nearly 2 years ago, bought them very young, and knew nothing about cohabbing or anything. And just it was kind of an impulsive kind of decision, really. I just sort of jumped at the idea and went for it. And so I came home with the 2 geckos and was all excited, getting their setup done with the wood chip. I did use a halogen light bulb, but the pet shop guy didn't provide me with any of the. I think he was just in it to make the money. Looking back in hindsight. So anyway, cut long story short. Sadly, the 2 girls that I bought from the pet shop passed. I had to get them. Well, one of them passed away. And the other one, I think, caught parasites and I had to get her put down. So it was a very kind of sad way for her to go. And it was at that point then when I realised, well, there's something not quite right here, because how can the first 2 geckos that I had live, and how can these 2 not cope? And I think, was it because they were living together and one was bullying the other? Was it, I mean, I was feeding them and I was making sure they had water, but their health just was deteriorating. Could it have been the substrate? Could it have been lack of heating? Because again, I was only provided with a heat mat. And the tank was pretty large, so, to house the 2. So there was a lot of kind of like, I felt that I was being negligent really towards them, but I was trying my best to try and greet them with the knowledge that I had at the time. But it was through the Facebook husbandry groups that I joined. So specifically, Leopard Gecko Advancing Husbandry, that was the first one I joined. And then later I joined the Advancing Herpetological Facebook group. And then later the Reptile Lighting group. And then also that taught me, so through reading files and stuff provided through those groups, it kind of spurred me in the direction of doing more of my own research, academic research. So looking at their wild habitat and and a lot of this information that I was finding out was very different from what I was reading in like the care books that were given to me by the pet shops, and it made me realize that there was a lot of like contradicting information. It was very kind of like a grey area, and thankfully these husbandry groups that I joined online were full of members who were passionate about advancing the hobby, advancing their husbandry, and it was led by experts in the field as well. So if it wasn't for that, really, I would have still been a bit stuck. So when I got Mr. Jinx, he was about 6 weeks old when I got him. And I learned about all the quarantining and the setups through these husbandry groups. And then I learned about the bioactive approach. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting because it kind of fitted in with my interest in nature and wildlife, and I thought, well, let's go for it. Let's give it a go. And after the two girls passing away, it kind of thought, I don't want this to happen again ever. I mean, I know things, pets. Sometimes you have to let them go and whatnot, and that sort of happens. But I felt really bad at the time. I felt it was me that caused them to, deteriorate through lack of knowledge. But I was a little bit dumbfounded because I'd kept geckos previously for between the two of them. One lived for 15 years, one lived for 12 years. So, between the two, there was a good 27 years there of experience of keeping geckos. Sorry, no, I've got that calculation wrong. I'm not the best with maths, guys, but anyway, long story short. So between the two geckos, so one lived so I had them both at the same time roughly. So overall, with the two, I had about 20 years experience. Yeah, one lived for 12 years, one lived for 14 years, and I had the two roughly about the same time, give or take a couple of years or so. So you're talking about 20 years of keeping leopard geckos before I had the break when they passed away. And then I ended up moving house and changing jobs and all sorts. So circumstances just sort of changed. So I didn't have the time really, or the sort of, I just wasn't ready to take on another gecko at the time when the first two passed away. Then when my two girls' babies passed away at such a young age, made me think I really need to kind of up my game here, because I do not want this to happen again. And I need to do proper research and network with like-minded people. And that's not easy because there are so many groups on social media which are SH1 really. They give improper advice and stuff, so it's difficult really to kind of know where to start. and I cannot remember how I came across the LGAH Facebook group. I can't remember if it was just by chance through browsing or because it was, I was on my own. None of my friends keep geckos or none of my neighbors do, and nobody else in my family does. So I was kind of like a bit, but I can't remember. But anyway, it was a godsend when they when I did come across them. So anyway, going on to Mr. Jinx. So I thought, right, I need to up my game, up my standards here, and I decided, right, I want to go for bioactive and try that out because I got experience of gardening, so I understand a bit about how soils work and how plants work and whatnot. Not that I had experience of plants in terrariums, and there has been a few plants which have, not done so well over the last 12 months, but that's all part of the learning process. But I just thought, that now that, so going back to September in 21 was the time to do it. Mr. Jinx, I'd had him then for 3 months, so he was in a quarantine setup, just on paper towel with a couple of plastic plants and a water dish, Kelsey dish, and a food bowl. And he was doing really well, and he was hunting. Even then, from a young age, I would pop some crickets in, just a handful, so maybe 2, 3, or 4 every day until he was about 3 months old, and then gradually increased it to maybe 5, 6 every other day. Slowly increasing the size of the insect as well. And then by the time he was 1, it was around about once a week. And I was loose feeding, so I was letting him hunt by himself. There was the odd time where, I wanted to, in order to bond and that sort of thing, where I would hand feed him or tongue feed him, especially when he moved into his, what I used to call a bioactive setup. I'll go into that in a second. So when he moved into that, I was tongue feeding for a while until he got used to kind of his surroundings and exhibiting his natural hunting behaviours and skills. And he was still only a youngster when he moved in there. He would have been about, 3 months old. Approx. 3, 4 months. Lots of people would consider that as too young to go into a bioactive setup. But I just thought, well, he's been in quarantine for 3 months. He's healthy. He's strong. He's had all the clear from the vets and everything. So I thought he can move in. And he is doing absolutely amazingly well. Now I don't have to I loose feed, and he hunts all by himself, and he is a very, very efficient hunter. So now it's just a case of me every maybe fortnight, every 3 weeks, go to the pet shop, get some food. Now that the winter is on its way, he's starting to eat a little bit less, and his metabolism has started to slow down, which is normal at this time of year for leopard geckos because of the colder seasons. But he's doing amazing, and I am really, really pleased with how the setup has developed from nothing really. And well, not nothing. I mean, I suppose experience has helped shape what you can see today, and the sort of healthy gecko. Um, so yeah, that's basically how I've got to this point, and it's extremely rewarding to see him explore on his own, um, through his own intuition, hunt. He even jumps off rock ledges to grab locusts and crickets. He's absolutely mad. So yeah, and then as time has gone on, the hobby has developed into looking into how the sciences work in the enclosure. So, like when you think of back in the school days of chemistry, biology, physics, I mean, I was into my sciences a little bit, more so biology than physics, though, because I was I had a bit of a rubbish teacher. But physics and maths has never been my strong point. Um, but but when you look at, say, the lighting side and the heat and how we compare that in the wild and how we can try and replicate, I found that there's a lot of physics and a lot of science involved. Um, and I would like to actually take this opportunity to thank the members and admin and moderators on the Reptile Lighting Facebook group, as well as the Advancing Herpetology group, for their advice and input to do with the reptile lighting side, because without their input, I would be struggling, really, because I mean they must get fed up of all the questions that I bombard on the group, to do with, well, how can I measure the wavelengths and the radiation and da da da. So yeah, and my sort of mind is very kind of inquisitive and has to be stimulated, and it doesn't stop. So which is why really this hobby is good for me, because it doesn't stop, and there's always something to learn, always. From the soil quality, how the soil produces nutrients for the plants to grow well, to the lighting and how the light interacts with the rocks, which conduct heat and blah blah blah. So there's a whole range, and then you've got temperature, humidity, and nutrition. There's loads. It's never ever ending, which is why I love it. It is, it's a fantastic hobby to get into. And the way I call it now is kind of like ecological, because it it touches on all the aspects of ecology, really, because everything in that tank interacts with each other in some way, shape, or form to make it function as a whole system. And that's what I find so interesting about it. So yeah, so I hope that has given you some sort of insight, really, into my background. And I mean, for job, I have done nothing really with reptiles. I've worked as a support worker with adults and young people with learning differences. I've worked as a stock and inventory control assistant in a huge warehouse. I've worked on a production line in a factory. I was training to be a youth worker, but then COVID happened and just threw a spanner in the works to all that. And then I ended up buying this guy here. But my latest venture is to go along the lines of ecology. Now, since a young child, I've always had an interest in the environment and nature. And this hobby has really kind of act as a bit of a catalyst, really. It's given me a nudge. It's given me a kick at the ass, really, to get my life together. and figure out what I want to do. And so I'm starting an Open University course this weekend to do a science module with a view to getting onto a level 4 university program in September next year in ecology. And I think that would be a really good career to go into. Even if it doesn't work out, I've still got this hobby to sort of fall back on. But I mean, I don't want to be thinking doubtfully now, thinking positive. And I think the sciencey stuff with this hobby will come in well to the course. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah. So I hope I don't bore you too much with my videos on YouTube. I do waffle on a bit, and yes, I do admit they are a little bit rough around the edges, these videos. I'm trying to improve the quality of the content and the actual videos. I suppose the main aim for me is just to nurture my content. I don't care about how many subscribers, or yes, it's great that I've achieved 100 milestone subscribers tonight. That's fantastic, and I'm very, very grateful for you guys for showing the support. But my main interest in this channel is just developing the content, and because as I develop my own knowledge and learn new things, and then I hope to convey that knowledge through my channel in order to share that with people like yourselves in order to develop the hobby. And I think with me having with this interest in the ecological aspects of it, because when you think of ecology, it's kind of like how living things interact with other living things and their surroundings, their environment. So it's kind of like a mosaic where all the pieces kind of fit and work together. And that can relate to the sort of stage I'm at in my life now, where I'm trying to fit the pieces together and move forward in an area that I'm interested in. So, yeah. So there we go. That's a very kind of, it's over half an hour long now, video of my background and why I got into this hobby and where I'm at with it now, and looking forward to the future. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Bye for now.